Muslims. Reach across the sectarian divide. Shiites. Find a Sunni pen pal. Communicate with someone on the other side. Sunnis, do the same. And then, maybe, reach out, tentatively, to a Christian, or even, heaven forbid, a Jew.
Yeah, I know. Yes, folks. Left Reckoning 78. That's Jordan Peterson, a man who took a flight over to visit Viktor Orban and talk about how Muslims were incompatible with democracy. Maybe you should get a fucking pen pal, boy. Anyway, sorry, I got pissed off at my own phone open. David Griscom, how are you today?
I'm good, brother, man. Really glad to be back. It was nice seeing you over the weekend. It was a lot of fun. Haven't seen you since we launched this whole project and everything. But we got a pretty fun show up for everybody. Talking about reunions, we're going to have Emma Vigeland on the program. Her first time on Left Reckoning, though you all know her from Majority Report and a frequent guest on TMBS as well. We're going to be talking a lot of different stuff. I'm looking forward to it. We have a little bit of an omnibus section with her. And I think if we're lucky, she's going to be joining us in the post game to talk a little bit about a New York State Senate race that a lot of people have had their eyes on. So I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah,
we'll see. Emma's been doing a lot of media lately, so she might not. We'll see. She might stick around for a fun post game. Patrons will know what that's been like. So
totally,
yeah.
And I'm stoked to be back here on Tuesday nights. I've always sort of missed doing these again, so it feels really good to come back into that time slot that we used to do.
I gotta say, I have not adjusted. I'm operating as if it's Wednesday completely right now. So tomorrow's going to come as a little bit of a shock for me, I think.
It'll be fun. And we got a lot of stuff coming up this month. Matt and I are still sort of cooking up some new offerings very soon. But I know that not this Thursday, but next Thursday, we're going to be doing at least a monthly, if not every 2 weeks cross show with our good friends at This Is Revolution podcast, where we're going to be tackling the news, hanging out, telling some stories together. So that will be Thursday nights, I think, at 8 p.m. Central, but time is a little tentative on that. But really looking forward to that. I'm sorry, y'all. I told everybody that we'd be launching the merch this week, but I've been jumping through these financial regulations and all the hoops and stuff. It's going to make me into a libertarian.
Stinking red tape. Yeah,
I know. I'm just trying to provide value and happiness to my community, and the government's hands are deep in my pockets on it.
The burden, man. The state just won't get off our backs, so we can get these t-shirts out there.
But hopefully next week we'll have that all up and ready for everybody. Plus, it'll be nice to make sure that goes off without a hitch. And also I'm cooking up. I know I promised it for last week. Sorry to just keep on promising and not delivering.
Sounded like Elon Musk over here.
I know. I'm learning.
He
from
never
him.
apologizes.
I'm learning from him.
Imagine him being like, "I'm sorry, I said that we'd have self-driving cars by 2018. That was wrong. I'm sorry that I said we'd have you be able to save your memories to a floppy drive. That won't happen." Yeah, no, he doesn't take accountability. This is David's modeling. What Elon Musk should be doing.
Made him into a billionaire, so not the worst track record. But no. I mean, I have a really cool video essay that I've been working on for actually a really long time. In a lot of ways on the post Bernie Sanders, post Corbyn moment, looking at that moment of what we might call left populism, sort of cooking in a bit of Leo Panitch, somebody who's been a huge influence on my thinking into that. So that'll be a video essay that we'll be releasing hopefully this week. So you can look forward to that, and we'll have more bonus episodes too on Sunday for everybody. But I mean, enough of the hellos. I know we didn't even miss a show, but I feel like I've been gone for like 2 weeks. We got a story that I'd like to start off before we get to Emma. And it's something that I've been worried about for a very long time. I know regular listeners of Left Reckoning know we talk about this a lot, but I've been very worried about what's happening in South Texas, because it really shows the failure of not only the national, but the state Democratic parties' failure here in Texas to look out for working people. And it's given the right wing a very frightening opening politically. So there are a few hot races in South Texas, which is frankly surprising as somebody who's been following Texas politics, most of my life. That's not something that you would think that you would be saying. That has always been sort of considered a pretty solidly blue part of the country. But it's not too surprising when you realize the fact that that's a part of not just the state, but a part of the country that has been completely underinvested in for years. And it just goes to show the way that Democratic Party officials treat voters of color and working class people as if they just are sort of forever bonded to them. Now, there is no light at the end of the tunnel in the sense there is no promised land in voting GOP. Don't get me wrong here. But the fact that, people are even considering that just to shake things up or send a message is really worrying, especially as we are hitting all these crucial fights on things like abortion, on things like workers' rights, on things like, potentially pursuing any kind of climate policy, let alone a Green New Deal, right? That's a very worrying development. And it just goes to show why the Democratic Party is not only dangerous just in the sense of what they do on the national level when they sort of blocked off, Bernie Sanders, but they're dangerous because their complacency breeds opportunities for a party that has shown itself to be very, very willing to govern with minority rule. You're seeing that, like, just look at the abortion laws here in Texas. Like, nobody wants, when you look at polling, like even in Texas, right, a state that most people consider to be right wing, people don't want a full out abortion ban. There's a little bit of, movement in the middle about where you think the line should be or something like that. But the policies that are being pursued by the GOP are not reflective even of the state population. So it just goes to show that the Republican Party is very willing to do minority, style government, in the sense of, looking out for minoritarian positions in government. And you should be able to beat them. And because the Democratic Party is so complacent, it really opens up this frightening window where a party that was already willing to just do minoritarian government, ruling from a very small segment of the population, it gives them an opportunity to pick up voters, which only will embolden them. But let's get to this ad here. So I think some people probably have seen this if you listen to Majority Report. But we talked about the special election that happened recently where Mayra Flores was elected the first Latina to ever represent the Rio Grande Valley in Congress, which is something that the Democrats should be very ashamed that they let a Republican take that from them. But in that race, the Democratic Party was not spending at all to counter her victory, right? Because they were trying to say that they're doing this four-dimensional chess where they'll let her win and get excited and then squash that excitement later on, which is a very dangerous game to play when we live through the Donald Trump presidency.
Yeah, I mean, it seems insane to me. Like, even if you would have, I say, sympathy with the Pied Piper strategy as capable of hitting and missing, this one seems insane. Like, let them get into office and then get them out later, like, so they have,
and run racist ads against her, by the way, but we'll get to that in a second. So there's a different moment now. The Democratic Party is spending significantly in these districts, but money does not always get you results, especially when these things are being cooked up by the folks at the DCCC in Washington. But let's just play. This is a radio ad. We'll just play a bit of this to show people what the message is to working class voters in South Texas who have been struggling under the Biden administration so far as they were struggling under the Trump administration. Let's hear the inspiring and motivating message from the Democratic Party. Well, that would be very inspiring if they did that. Hold up, y'all. Sorry.
First, they play our theme song.
Here we go.
Oh, my back and neck hurt.
That's because you're working too much. Calmate, you should slow down.
I can't. I need to make more money. Look, with gas prices through the roof and my kids needing daycare, it's not enough.
Don't worry so much.
I'm just so stressed out, and I don't know what else to do.
What you could do is vote for Democrats. These Republican extremists have no plan to help us.
But Democrats seem so out of touch.
Not true. These MAGA Republicans are only working for rich people. Democrats know firsthand that even small price increases are hard on working families like ours. Democrats are finding solutions, unlike the Republicans. Calmate. What you could do is vote for Democrats.
Paid for by DCCC. DCCC.org. Not authorized for any candidate or candidates committee. DCCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So just to get on the same page for folks who aren't familiar, the DCC is the Democratic Party's sort of national organizing pack. So these are done without the consent or the consideration from like the local candidates. But it just shows the way that the Democratic Party is thinking that they're going to be able to stop this really frightening movement of people. And I also want to remind folks too that it's not so much that people are necessarily flipping as much as a lot of people aren't voting. And then people who were sort of on the fence about voting are now voting for Republicans. So non-voters are being converted into Republicans, and voters are just sort of typical voters aren't voting in the first place. But this just hits at like a lot of the bullshit in the National Democratic Party and the State Democratic Party here in Texas that I really wanted to highlight. First of all, it's ridiculous to make that argument about how just be calm, right? Calmate. Vote for Democrats when you look at what the track record of Democratic Party candidates and elected officials are in South Texas. If you could pull up this first bit here, Matt, from Vina. Henry Cuellar, their favorite boy, somebody who they literally were flying down into Texas to campaign for, to block out a progressive in a race that came down to just a few hundred votes recently. The only Democrat to vote against making abortion a right in this country. He's also been doing this recently. This is for Vina Dubal, who we've had on the show recently. You should definitely check out that interview talking about the way that Uber uses misclassification of workers to try to undermine basic workers' rights. Henry Cuellar has this bill called the Workplace Flexibility and Choice Act. It's going to carve out workers out of minimum wage and overtime protections, not just app deployed workers, any worker whose employer, you just scroll down to the next bit, decided that they would set schedules using algorithms and incentives instead of providing secure hours, would no longer have to provide a wage floor or overtime. That is the confluence of a few different things. One, how our regulatory system is so defunct that it allows companies to basically just skirt labor law if they have an app behind it and it's some new technology. I mean, this is basic
That's
shit.
Peter Thiel, baby. That's Peter Thiel, like Peter Thiel o'clock. I feel like you create something new that can be a monopoly, but the new means is able to evade existing regulations because you call it like technology instead of a taxi.
No, and yeah, it's it totally gets there, and we should have Vina on to sort of break down the rest of this bill in the future. But the point is that like this idea that, oh, the Republicans are so bad, just vote for the Democrat. Well, the options that you're putting up are people like that, and that's fairly horrific of an argument to make. There's in that race, for example, there's nowhere you could go if you're horrified by the fact that the Supreme Court undemocratically took away basic human rights from millions of people in this country. And if you want to push back against the Texas GOP, which is basically making it possible for people to get access to healthcare in the state, if you wanted to vote your conscience on that, you don't have an option there. But don't worry, calmate. Right, that's the argument that you're getting there from the DCC. And two, even if it wasn't just Cuellar, right? Because Cuellar is an exceptional example of he is like the pure embodiment of that kind of centrist blue dog Democrat ideology. Was there anything there that was particularly inspiring? No, that was just a dressed up version of their argument to suburban voters, right? Which is how Biden won the presidency, which was the Republicans, they embarrass us and they're a little crazy and they do things that we don't like. Don't you want like nice people who don't embarrass you in office? Effectively, that's what that argument was. It was just presented to a different group of people, one who, by the way, I don't think are going to be very, very motivated by this idea of like we need to return to normalcy when people are struggling with high gas prices, which they noted in that piece. With inflation, with the fact that the Biden administration has basically walked away from all the pandemic policies that really helped out working class people. I mean, what is the motivation there to show up and vote for the Democratic Party? Very little.
Yeah, I mean, it's very focus group brain. Like, yeah, we know that the Democratic Party is out of touch. Maybe, like, I'm trying to imagine a hypothetical where, like, the DCCC was taken over by, like Corbynite type folks who were like really about to make some changes, and you acknowledge like, yes, there's a perception out there that we're out of touch. We're actually looking to do bread and butter things about inflation, things like that. The problem is they're not. They're not actually doing those things. Like, it'd be nice if they were. They're relatively, like, they make better sounds about those things than Republicans do. But like, you have a Fed that's basically starting a recession. I don't know if that's too reductive to say you're the economics expert, but
Yeah.
where do they care about working people? The people that, I mean, to put like, that's what really is galling, I think, to folks is you have a woman saying, "Oh, I can't like continue my life because I just need to work for more money," and you know, you have Cuellar and you have Joe Manchin talking about entitlement, and what are you doing about it?
No, it's a complete joke, and this whole thing goes into the ideology of the Democratic Party that was so paper thin as a strategy that they're losing on it. So if you read and please don't waste your time doing stuff like this, but if you read press releases when the DCC puts out a new ad campaign, their directors are so excited about the fact that they're putting out ads that sound like us, right? That sound, and they're really trying to focus on like, if we sort of present ourselves and do ad that sort of seems like, oh, it's a native speaker, somebody from our community, that's going to be motivating for folks. Well, guess what, friends? The fucking Republican Party is doing the exact same thing in these hot races that we're seeing right now. It's right-wing Republican, Latinas running against establishment Democratic Party, Latinos, right? So it doesn't work the kind of like, oh, we're going to get this a person who's able to present themselves as like an authentic member of the community. And it just shows like how short-sighted that strategy of the Democratic Party was, that they could always just sort of present themselves as the party of the working class, as the party of people of color in this country. And they weren't going to, and the Republicans were never going to be able to find any avatars to sort of, try to do the same kind of thing. What you have to do for people is show up for them on a material basis. And they have absolutely, failed to do that. Like, where is the talk right now about the fact that Exxon fucking Mobil, during these past few months, when they noted the fact that gas prices are making people struggle, raked in $17.9 billion in profit. And I know people probably aren't very familiar with how much profit, these kind of corporations make in the first place. That is the most profit in one quarter that a business in Texas has ever made from business operations. Historical in the history of Texas, right? That's what they did over the past few months. Where's the real talk on that, right? Is this abstract stuff? Henry Cuellar is one of oil's favorite boys, too. So it's not like he's somebody who's going to do something about the oil industry. It's a real dangerous light that they think that they can continue to play this game. And I know some people might be like, well, I know David cares about this because he's in Texas. He cares about Texas. This is the kind of political stuff that has serious ramifications. Remember a couple of years ago, people were going on and on about Texas becoming a purple state. That shit's not going to happen if South Texas starts flipping Republican. And for the millions of people that live in this state, the situation here is only going to get worse if they continue to lose. We're going to get to Emma in just a second, but I just wanted to break down a couple quick things that are like really frightening about this moment. Particularly looking at Texas 34, which is Vicente Gonzalez, a Democrat, versus Mayra Flores, who people might know is the person they let win, is a QAnon super right-wing character. But she presents herself as an immigrant to this country, speaks about herself in a certain way that, I think speaks to a common experience that a lot of folks have. If you look at the fundraising there's some really worrying things. Now, the Democrats are out raising them, but the Democrats are pulling in a shitload of money from out of state. And if you look at average donor contribution, Gonzalez is getting something like $2,000 for his average donation, while Mayra Flores is getting $200. It just shows that, people are opening up their wallets. And don't mistake me. And people think that Mayra Flores is some kind of champion of the working class. She's got plenty of billionaires, in her pocket as well, including the scourge of Austin, Elon Musk, right? She is somebody who they are vying for this to become a national superstar. But the fact is that when you don't play the game at all, you let the fucking Republicans play the game and beat you. And that's the really worrying moment that we're in South Texas, and they need to wake up.
Or you could say, like, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. I don't know. Like you can't just play it on that level, because that can be gamed. I talk about my buddy Chris. He lost there was like a bunch of candidates in the race. He was the most progressive. The guy who got second above him was the second most progressive, a white guy. And the person who won that race there, where there's a runoff, the second guy won. But the top winner was a Latina who was married to a Republican, like very reactionary, was going to model how you can be a Democrat and be pro-life. So like, right. And it was, and why did she win? Not because people just assumed that, like, people going to, I think, vote for Beto, where there was some big race going on, just assumed that she'd be the most progressive based on those sorts of identity things. And like, those things are great, but you have to like understand that those games, well, I guess we have to understand the corporate Democrats understand that these games can be won by them in certain ways, and that's why they're willing to play them, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, their whole strategy right now is picking up suburban voters, and they're trying to put that onto other groups, and it doesn't work in the same way, because the difference between rich people and working people is working people need to have material politics. They need you to improve their lives a little bit. Rich people, they just want something different on the television, right? They're voting to change the channel, while working people are demanding something more. And just really briefly, if you could pull up these last two bits here, because the point here is that we have to be showing up in these communities and doing that kind of real organizing. And this includes progressives. And this is a piece that was in The Nation a little while ago, by Steve Phillips. And I'm going to criticize it a little bit, but I want to remind folks, I suggest reading the piece. It's a fine piece. He makes a lot of arguments that we make on this show, is that Democrats should be really embracing policies to help out working people, including higher minimum wage, things like Medicare for all, and canceling student debt, right? We all agree on that. But he also sort of falsely merges it with this kind of ideological shtick that the Democratic Party has committed themselves to and are losing on. So he sort of pushing back against this idea that there is this movement with Tejano and Latino voters in Texas, by noting Greg Casar. And Greg Casar is somebody who I wholly endorse. Greg Casar is probably going to be one of the most pro-worker members of Congress coming up in this next cycle. I'm very thrilled and excited that he's going to be there. But if we could just pull this up really quick, I wanted to note, make it a little larger so I can read it.
Oh, sorry. You know the same thing?
Yes, yeah. Please. Thank you, Matt. He makes this argument about Greg Casar that it just sort of falls flat when you look at what the Republican strategy is here. Greg Casar comes from and understands and speaks to those underlying realities of the Latino lived experience. The second sentence of his website says, "The proud son of Mexican immigrants, Greg has passed policies to protect families from being separated, raised wages for thousands of workers, and has successfully fought to expand civil rights protection. Proud Mexican American," that's the end of the quote. Proud Mexican American, economic equality, civil rights, followed by a dominating victory. It's really not that complicated. The reason Democrats don't inspire the level of excitement that they could amongst Latinos is that the first principle of party politics is to not do anything that insecure and anxious white voters might disapprove of. As a result, Democrats keep their distance, muting their support for justice, equality for people of color. Insufficient policy commitment and invisible cultural and symbolic cultural moves cause this loss, right? And he's making this argument here that like what they need to do is sort of embrace and affect and sort of promote themselves as representatives of these things. And I don't disagree necessarily. Greg Casar, I want there to be a Greg Casar candidate running in every fucking congressional race in Texas. That is 100% right. You selected the right model. But it's a mistake here to not realize, why is Greg Casar so popular? Well, Greg Casar won that race not solely because he said he's a son of a proud Mexican immigrant, right? He ran against another Hispanic candidate as well. The reason he beat out his opponents because Greg Casar has been organizing and winning for working class people in the Austin area for years upon years. And people knew that by moving him from the Austin City Council to Congress, he was going to deliver for them, right? So it's not solely because Greg presented himself in a certain way. Mayra Flores is doing that. The right-wing reactionary QAnon supporter is promoting herself as a very proud immigrant to this country, right? That's not the formula for success. And this is the fundamental problem with the kind of politics that we're getting from the National Democratic Party and from the State Democratic Party, that if they can just point to a couple things, if they can do a couple more ads in Spanglish, that things will be better and people will be attracted to them. No, people will show up for you when you promote and fight for these kind of policies. And going back to some of the conversations we've had about a certain race in New York State, and show people that you have the capacity to move things from a list on a website into actual policy. And until we start getting serious about doing that, we will lose. So yeah, two middle fingers to the fucking National Democratic Party, two middle fingers to the failure of leadership of the state Democratic Party here in Texas. But the fight is on us to build movements that can develop candidates that can win, there, because they're not going to do it. And the right wing knows that they can play the same kind of, symbolic games that the Democratic Party has been playing for so long and potentially can win.
Yeah, and just real quick before I just want to make this point, and we'll get Emma on. But the Phillips mentions the anxious white voters and pulling punches, and I have no doubt that is absolutely a problem that you run into when campaigning. But Phillips is also exhibiting another thing, another anxiety that's being avoided and punches are being pulled when you use terms like economic inequality. That is, you use terms like that because you don't want to scare the money away.
Yep.
Yeah, right. You'd be talking about wages and things like that, but economic equality, I don't know what that means. That could be just civil rights in the workplace and non-discrimination, right? So I'm just saying, shouldn't pull punches. And if we're going to, and I feel like that, like you said, that punch was pulled there. But anyways.
Yeah. No, it's a ticking time bomb, y'all. And, let's get serious about it. So we're going to bring Emma on. Just want to thank everybody. The support we've been getting recently has been wonderful. I'm excited to launch some of these new things. If you want to support the show, you can support us at patreon.com/leftreckoning. You get the bonus episodes. You get access to the Discord, and you get access to the post game, which happens right after this program, where you can leave us voicemails and discourse, and we can hear from you. So consider doing that at patreon.com/leftreckoning. But without any further ado, let's bring on our guest this evening.
Yeah, joining us now, Emma Vigeland. She is the illustrious co-host of Majority Report, my colleague at the Majority Report, and also my friend. Emma, welcome to Left Reckoning.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much for having me. I'm so pumped to be on.
Yeah, it was always kind of scheduling this. It's like you don't want to go too early in Left Reckoning, but now we're at episode 78, and people start to wonder, is there something wrong? So just to preclude any of those worries, we're gonna have some fun tonight.
Magic number 78. I'm pretty sure that is Andrew Thomas's number, the left tackle on the Giants. So
there you go.
All my hopes are pinned on him, just like they're pinned on this episode.
Well, that's why I chose it. I absolutely knew that. 78, definitely very numerically significant number. That's when
exactly.
When you're running for jerseys at the start of basketball camp, and you pull 78 out of the pile, it's like, oh. I was hoping at 23.
Well, we got a lot to get to tonight, Emma, but I might have to ask you if you don't mind. I mean, a couple of weeks, I'm pretty excited for football to start up again. You feeling good about the Giants this year?
Oh, please. Of course not. But I do fool myself into watching training camp footage every year and Kadarius Toney's pretty cool. Or, the Giants are going to max out at 6 wins this year, but it's they haven't won a playoff game since they won that Super Bowl, which I was at, which is why I'm the way I am today, because it kind of cemented my obsession. So still chasing that dragon.
Well, as much as I hate to compare things, it's sort of like me and UT, where it's so many incredible games, and it's been a very long period of darkness, and
But congrats on Arch.
I'm very excited. Everyone's stoked here. I think I feel very confident about the Longhorns this year. You can hear that first, but
Well, to me, the most exciting thing about the Giants, before we move off that, is that when I was in high school, they moved to the NY helmets, and that was a retro throwback. And it's oh, this is really welcome. I love this throwback. And now I feel like we're at the point where they can move back to the Giants spelled out in all caps, and that's also a throwback.
Yeah.
And I feel like they can just go back and forth between those two for 100 years.
They just introduced those as alternate helmets. So they literally this year they read your mind, Matt.
There you go. It's time.
Let's get to some of this stuff, y'all.
Let's do it. So I want to be authoritarian for a little bit. There's a story out of Kansas, and as I looked about 5 minutes ago, only 2% of the vote is in for this ballot measure that would, my understanding is, allow them to attack abortion in Kansas. There's a reading of the Constitution that says, I'm assuming the right to privacy granted the right to Kansans, and now Republicans have a ballot measure that would make that fair game for the legislature. There's a story here by the Washington Post democracy dies in the darkness. Actually doing some good reporting. I don't want to be too cynical. And misleading Kansas abortion texts linked to Republican-aligned firm. Let me just pull that up here.
Yeah, this is pretty nuts.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to say anything before we get into this article on this?
Basically, I mean, as this stream happens, right, we're awaiting the results of what's going to happen with this ballot measure in Kansas. And the way that it's phrased is pretty convoluted. And I think it seems like Republican groups are taking advantage of that.
Right. And I mean, there's that. And then there's this part, which I think should just be illegal, which is messages were sent using numbers leased by Alliance Forge, a Nevada-based firm crafted by a PAC led by former Congressman Tim Huelskamp, Arkansas. More on him in a little bit. But like, look, and I kind of like, we talked about this a little bit with Ben Burgess on Twitter. Like, I'm not sure what under the civil code this is illegal. But there's this sort of like general feeling that like, you know, you can't lie. I remember Trump joking about this. Like, you can't lie about what date the election falls on. And I'm trying to find it. I haven't been able to find an actual law that's against that. But to me, that should be a fine and 5 years in prison. But just to go through this article.
Why are you against free speech?
I know. I mean, literally, I am against this kind of free speech. Absolutely. The text messages arrived on Monday, the day before Kansans were set to vote on an amendment that would excise abortion protections from their state constitution. The text claimed that approving that measure, which could allow the Republican-controlled legislature to outlaw abortion, would safeguard, quote, choice. If the amendment fails, constitutional protections would remain in place, buttressing current law that allows abortion in the first 22 weeks of pregnancy. This is what the text said. Women in KS are losing their choice on reproductive rights, the text warned. Voting yes on the amendment will give women a choice. Vote yes to protect women's health. But the messages were crafted by a political action committee led by Tim Huelskamp, a former hardline Republican. Oh, I need that bigger. Sorry, David. Going to countermand your order there. A former hardline Republican congressman from Kansas and enabled by a fast-growing Republican-aligned technology firm, according to, and like technology firm, what they're doing is buying Twilio numbers and sending text from them, right? Like this is the same infrastructure we take voicemails on. It's like, it's not like fucking Peter Thiel in a lab. I mean, not that he's a smart guy either. The people and the groups behind the campaign have not been previously reported. The messages were sent from the phone numbers that have been leased by Alliance Forge. Anyway, this last bit, the Kansas Government Ethics Commission said Monday that under current law, text message advocacy about constitutional ballot initiatives does not require paid disclaimers. And like that, to me, seems like the problem. This is where we should federalize elections and have that be, I mean, at least that much. I mean, I guess it's one thing. If you're going to pay for a bunch of lies about the election, then say put your name to it. I guess that's a good reform. I would prefer prison, particularly in the view of with who we do in prison. Crystal Mason's contentious illegal voting conviction must be reconsidered, criminal appeals court says. So Crystal Mason, who in 2016 sentenced to 5 years because she was ineligible to let me get out of our Canva here, was ineligible to vote because she was on parole, I think, or out of prison for some reason. And you get in prison for that. Just look at that. Tells you everything about what's allowed and what's not allowed in this country. And it drives me crazy. But before I let you guys weigh in, I did find a little intro to Tim Huelskamp. So we're going to take a little 2 minutes with Tim, and I'll let you guys sound off.
Hello, I'm Dr. Tim Huelskamp, president of the Heartland Institute. Welcome to our new feature on Heartland's YouTube page called 2 Minutes with Tim. From Heartland's new television studio, I'll be visiting with you and fellow lovers of liberty about the news of the day. And to kick off this feature, let me first fill you in on what a great 2017 it was for Heartland and the rise of freedom. First of all, in July, I was honored to take over as president of Heartland.
Now, I love that. That's enough. That's as much as we're going to watch of that. But I love the idea of you're going through, like, you're the head of a foundation. Let's go through what the best things that happened among many to this foundation were. Number one, I became the head of it. That's very funny to me. But that's Tim Huelskamp, the guy who is lying to you by text messages. Sorry, I'm talking a lot, but also drives me insane. These phone things, not useful anymore. Not useful because everybody who calls you is trying to scam you. Everyone who texts you is trying to get you to cough up your PayPal password. It's all scams, and that should also be a functioning country should be able to regulate that, I think. So anyway, that's the amount of my complaints. I'll let you guys go in on it.
I mean, my first thought is that this is supposed to be under the jurisdiction of something like the FTC, but I'd imagine that they're so hamstrung by the insane precedents set by Citizens United and other campaign finance laws that it's just so easy to get around it, and they're a ghost ship at this point. And this should be illegal. It should 100% be illegal. But it goes to show that, like, that example that you laid out, Matt, if you're somebody who makes an earnest mistake about whatever district or county you're in, or if you're able to vote given your status legally, they're going to bring the hammer down on you. But if you are en masse trying to mislead voters and trying to get them to vote against what they actually believe in, if they don't read every fine print on a ballot measure, that individually is not a threat to democracy. It's just the one person who may have had a criminal record due to drugs trying to vote to save abortion access, or that was in the Texas Tribune. So I don't remember the specifics of that case, but lock her up, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a. I do mean to be, intense when I say this. Like, this is like an attack on democracy, but like this is one of those things. Like, I do very much support like ballot initiatives and like bringing questions to the people, but the way that the right wing has been willing to do this lately is increasingly not just frustrating, like frightening. Like, they are willing, this ballot. I'm sorry, this constitutional amendment there is extremely vague. And you have to do two jobs, right? You have to convince people to show up and vote for you, and then help them figure out which side means which. Is a yes vote for this or no vote for that? And like, they're doing the same thing here. Like, we had a lot of state, amendments on the ballot in the most recent election. And like, Lord, like, I do this for a living. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I had to have my cheat sheet with me because they're all written in this kind of vague, opaque way. And that's the game that they're trying to play, particularly in Western states where you do have these kind of ballot initiatives to just try to rule in that way. Like, I don't think that we should be against that as a tactic. Like, Luke Mayville is doing amazing stuff in Idaho. They're saying, well, the Republicans are never going to do things that are really popular, like expanding Medicaid and saving, thousands and thousands of people. We'll just bring that question to people, and the people say, yeah, we'd like that. But what the Republicans are trying to do is trying to squeeze in these like really sneaky and confusing amendments. And I don't know how many other things were on the ballot there in Kansas. I don't know if this was the only thing that they were voting on today. But here's like, you got like 30 different things, and a lot of them are really psycho and dangerous. And worrying for democracy. And that's like the game that they're playing. I mean, I think that like one of the points that I've been trying to remind folks about the Republican Party is like, they're extremely happy with minoritarian government. Like, they're extremely happy with sort of like having their core base and then sort of pulling in other people straight up through deceit in this way, into accidentally supporting them or misleading them about what they're intending to actually do. And yeah, like, we should be, extremely worried about it. I'll be curious to see how successful this initiative is. I mean, early counts are. I'm
on New York Times now, right, or website right now, checking out the polling, and it's just 6% reporting, but it's 70.
And those are going to be urban too.
Yeah, right, exactly. So
you can't say anything confidently.
Yeah,
but
to your point, really quickly, David, like, the entire abortion debate is built on deceiving voters, because they hide the ball until the very last minute and then they strike. They're like snakes in the grass. It was the same thing with this Roe v. Wade decision. Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Coney Barrett. Hey, it's settled law. They'll answer that under oath. And then as soon as they get into power and they understand, all right, we got the 6 votes for this, let's go. This is time to strike. And even after that, so it happens, it's like they stab you and then they say, hey, you just need a Band-Aid, right? It's not that bad. You're basically the same. And they're pretending like nothing's really changed. Nothing's different. Don't worry about it. And it's just a way to quell people's fears so that they can lay the groundwork to go after contraception, gay marriage, whatever. And they do that in a variety of ways, including, hiding the ball and changing and making text on ballot initiatives so convoluted that no one can understand what's even in it.
Or one of these fellows, I can't remember what group he was in, but he runs those like just monstrous things they call like crisis centers, and they present them as if they're an abortion clinic to people, saying that like a 10-year-old could be a very great mother, right? And it's like,
Well, and we're still talking about so you want people to have abortions at 8.5 months? Like, we're still having that fucking conversation as they just completely attack the right. I mean, I don't want to get off.
But I'd be curious.
Yang says that's the other side of the abortion debate.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have some words for that guy in a second. But I mean, I'm just curious. I know you've definitely talked about this a lot in Majority Report. But like, I mean, how do you feel about the response so far from the National Democratic Party, to this Roe v. Wade decision?
I mean, I think I've been as critical of it as anything, frankly. I mean, they seem to only focus on the electoral elements of what this means for them. And they don't even do that part smartly, but I kind of want to put that aside for a second. If you have spent decades talking about how this is a fundamental right to privacy, by the way, and this is a point I borrowed from Matt because it's so good. Like, they make it a privacy point, which is a way to obscure what the larger problem is that healthcare needs to be a right and free for people in this country, and that includes abortion care. And so they don't want to say that in the same way that Pelosi, despite it being cheaper and more effective during COVID, didn't want to expand Medicare temporarily to people and just wanted to do the more convoluted COBRA subsidies, because even cracking that door open is such a threat to the Democratic leadership as currently constructed, and most of the Democratic establishment as well, even though I hesitate to use that phrase largely, but it's true. Like, they can't even begin to entertain that. And so they talk around the issue messaging wise and make it about an individual privacy right. Yeah. They won't even say abortion for the most part. I mean, Pelosi's on this vanity trip for her China hawkishness in Taiwan right now. Like, if this is the fundamental issue for Democratic voters, as it should be based on polling and also just based on what's right, then it should have been all hands on deck. And I don't really care if Biden doesn't think that he has the legality to do abortions on federal lands. Do it, and then let the Supreme Court strike it down. And then, do whatever else you can and let the Supreme Court strike it down. Talk about reining back judicial review. Begin to talk about packing the court. Like, these things sound like fairy tales because of who is in power right now, but that's actually what should be being done, obviously.
And also, like, that's what they did. Like, the Republicans, like the fact that like there's no abortion in Texas right now is because they passed laws that were clearly against, the law of the land, and they just had them. They did it in a clever way that protected them from legal challenges long enough for this to happen. That those effectively went on the books.
And it's wild, like this act, like, oh, you can't really do much with the presidency. No, we all saw Trump, motherfucker. Like, we saw him. He would try. He wouldn't just be sitting there. He would be causing a constitutional crisis. And guess what? Fuck the Constitution. You should be causing constitutional crisis at a time like this, when like the Supreme Court is illegitimate. Like, it just is. And also, I just want to credit you credited me with that point. That was actually from Liz Franzak, her first time on TMBS back in the day. But yeah, it is such a great point. And I just want to reiterate the other one, which is like that and the attack on trans people is just capital reacting against people being empowered to seek their own healthcare. The same with like you don't what about 8.5 month abortions? That is just there to smear just people and doctors. That's all there is, and to put a judge between those. That's the entire. There's not an actual problem of people getting 8.5 month abortions. It is just a wedge to put judges in between people in care. And so I guess we'll keep an eye out for further updates.
We'll keep that up tonight. Well, we want to talk about some of the potential solutions to this crisis that we're at in our democracy.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some guys with a bunch of great ideas. And Mehdi Hassan, like I appreciate the work Mehdi does on MSNBC. I think he's one of the better folks. There's frankly a couple people that have shows there. I don't know the names of all of them, but they seem okay. I do like Mehdi's work most of the time. And here he has on former Governor Christine Todd Whitman. She is Forward Party co-chair. And here's well, actually, I should just poll you guys. What have you heard about Forward Party? Are you guys as excited as I am?
Oh, this is gonna fix everything, right? We have a party that saw a meme about this today, but thinks capitalism is more important than democracy, and Democrats think no, they're equally as important. So we need to find a way to stave a middle ground, to create a middle ground between those two parties.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And it's like, yeah.
I mean, as like any centrist movement is completely incoherent, but like personally, like I'll never forget, and I do hold the Yang movement responsible for this. One day I was doing work in a coffee shop when I was still in New York for TMBS, and we were doing a segment against Yang's like really horrendous UBI. So I was watching Yang videos, and this guy comes from across the beam, like, and pulls out a Forward hat from his backpack, and like I'm in the club with him, and had like the worst conversation with this guy for like 10 minutes. So on that,
You mean the math hat? You mean the math hat?
Oh, the math
right?
hat. Sorry,
that's
the math
probably
hat.
worse.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw a great tweet from somebody in the Forward Party saying, I was hoping I could find it, but it's like, look, all the new energy in the Forward Party is great. So what if some people that are joining the Forward Party aren't pro UBI? What should you do about that? Organize even harder for the Forward Party for the people who are pro UBI. And it's like, this is imaginary, though. like do that in either the GOP or the Democrats, or like at some kind of but this is on a national level, this is just imaginary.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah. Anyways, sorry. Oh, my mouse just.
You're getting Matt nervous, man.
Well, let's go. I mean, they have former Governor Christine Todd Whitman.
Oh man, right? Yeah.
So let's hear what she says. An expert at the the executives in politics. You got to have a lot of like command of detail and stuff like that. Let's see Mehdi ask her about Forward Party.
You mentioned that you're bringing different people in. It feels like the Forward Party is a place where moderate, non-MAGA Republicans, such as yourself and David Jolly, can find a new home. But it's not really a place for moderate Democrats, because moderate Democrats already have a home in a normal, non-extremist Democratic Party led by a moderate Joe Biden. I mean, are there any top moderate Democrats in your new party? It feels very Republican heavy. I mean, there's Andrew Yang, but he never held an elected position as a Democrat. He ran for president, lost, ran for mayor, lost, then quit the party. You don't actually have any top Democrats in your movement, do you?
Yes, actually we do, but you have to go to the website because there are so many there that you'll see that
Can you name one?
I can't, just because I'm terrible with names and I've got it all. I can go to it if you'd like me to. I can put on my glasses and summon it up. But yes, there are.
I'm just wondering who's the most prominent former Democrat in your party who's elected official, because Andrew Yang ain't it.
We have a former Democrat congressman who ran for president. We have a former Democrat congressman who was a military officer. There are a number of former Democrats who are part of this organization. I just happen to be someone who's terrible with names. I couldn't even name you all the Republicans that are on the list, but we have them, and believe me, we're getting more.
Well, that is exciting.
Oh, I can't wait.
I mean, this isn't going anywhere other than extending Yang. Like, because remember, like Yang's whole career sort of comes out of his ability to market himself as a reformer and a forward thinker. His organization, I forget the name, that sort of set up high achieving college students in underdeveloped, economically disadvantaged cities. And by the way, we're talking about like Las Vegas, cities like that. Was an absolute disaster. They have like no real examples of success. Most of the people did the amount that they had to legally and then they moved to San Francisco, New York City, or Atlanta, or wherever, right? And the pressure that was put on them was immense, and had some like really disastrous results. But like but during that time, like Yang gets honored by the Obama administration for coming up with new solutions. But the fact is that Yang doesn't really understand the fundamental problems. The fact that this is a guy who is live tweeting himself, like reading Civil War history, like he did recently, where he was talking about Abraham Lincoln starting a new third party, and how exciting that was. And everyone's like, please read the next chapter.
Sorry.
Like, this is not somebody who's a very this is not somebody who has the kind of political chops to lead any kind of movement, let alone a political movement that is as incoherent as this, which is why what I'm saying is that like Yang is somebody who's saw that he had like a little bit of star power before even he ran for president, found running for president as a great opportunity to increase, his name recognition across the country, then ran an absolutely disastrous campaign for mayor of New York City. This is just another example to keep, because he can't run for any more offices for a little bit, at least. This is a good way to sort of keep him relevant. He's speaking at Trib Fest here in Texas in a month, which is not the biggest deal in the world, but it just shows that like that's like the end goal, right? Is like getting invited to media events like that, so you can be asked questions by journalists as if you're a very important, notable figure.
Who said the Abe Lincoln thing? Yang?
Yeah, Yang was like live tweeting himself, like reading through American history. I'd have to like recap to get all the details right, but he was very confused basically about the birth of the Republican Party and what was going to come next.
Yeah, not originally a centrist party. My understanding of history was that
the radical Republicans were a place for Americans to come together.
People are just tired of all the fighting on all sides. Like, let's come together and abolish slavery. Like, I don't think that's quite how that party emerged. I think that's more like the Whigs. Man, that's really.
He wishes they were the Whigs.
Yeah, like you're not even the Whigs. You're like.
Well, it's a way to make money. I mean, clearly, Christine Todd Whitman hasn't been in politics for a long time. I forget when she left office in New Jersey. I mean, I must have been pretty young because I grew up in that state, and I'm just forgetting actually what the sequencing was. But regardless, it is interesting to me that Yang has staked this position, because I feel like he's lost all defenders. Because as you said, David, like the illusion is over that UBI is this transformative policy proposal, because he never marketed it as an addition or as a supplement to Medicare, to Medicaid, to Social Security, or as an additive to Medicare for All or other social policies and programs. Housing is a human right, things that we advocate for seriously on the left. He argued for it as a replacement. And that is not a serious position. It's actually really just a way to divert public funds that people pay into back into the private sector. So, if it goes back into consumers' pockets, where does it go? It goes back into industry and to food and drink and gas and wherever people want to spend it. And that was what he sold to a lot of people. And that's why I think he's still able to make bedfellows with people, with Republicans on this kind of, vanity project grift thing. It's no better than the People's Party. It's just got a few more established figures and famous faces. They're just trying to remove you from your money for their own ability to get into cocktail functions and conventions and things like that.
Well, totally. Forward Party was at least running candidates, unlike People's Party.
They have that.
They're running they're
or endorsed
people to buy super chats on YouTube, but 100%, I just wanted my folks, in case this gets out to people who aren't familiar with these arguments, like the criticisms of Andrew Yang's UBI is not that working people don't need more money. Right. It's twofold. It's one, that the way his UBI set up was to be a negative, right? So it comes at the expense of social policies. And two, here's the more radical anti-capitalist critique, is in a situation where wages are just precipitously like declining, and capital is taking up more and more profit. Capitalists like ideas like UBI because they need to have a consumer base in this country. So the idea of the UBI is something to, pump up some money in people's pockets while not affecting the profit margin of corporations, right? Remember, if you're a worker, you go to work every day and you do something that creates value, that your boss and that corporation then profit off of. And the socialist critique of that is that workers shouldn't be taking the bare minimum from the value that they're creating. They should be taking the entirety of it. So Yang is like not a solution in any kind of real sense. It's actually trying to find a way to make a broken system continue. And the thing is, like, UBI stuff, is not even like a crazy idea on the far right. Milton Friedman, like the king of right-wing economics, had a concept called helicopter money, right? A little bit less targeted than UBI, but the idea effectively was, it was a little tongue-in-cheek, but effectively the policy would be you just throw money out of a helicopter every once in a while so people have a little bit more money in their pocket, to sort of deal with the fact that, yes, under capitalism, there are winners and losers, and there are a few winners and very many losers. So you have to have a system that sort of puts money in people's pockets to maintain the system, or else the entire thing will collapse. And they hate the welfare state on the right, even though that is a huge part of the reason that the American system and the European system hasn't collapsed, in the past 50, 60 years. And like UBI is like a little bit nicer version of creating a system like that, where like, let's not deal with the fact that all these corporations are just sucking up all the profits and the value that they're taking from us from our labor. Let's give everybody $1,000. People will be happy because it takes a little bit of stress off their backs, and let landlords take the extra money in the form of rents or higher food prices or whatever.
It was always, you have to couple it with decommodification of essentials, because who did your $2,000 go to? It went to your fucking landlord.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The very first month it went to them, right? Like, no.
Yeah, right. Or you could do UBI plus housing assistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
I totally left out landlords, but sorry to cut you off, Matt.
No. I mean, that's it. It's like, we did a joke in Chicago, which is like the pack for Andrew Yang would be called like landlords for UBI, because they're going to be flush, and there are certain people who are parasites, and until which just means rentiers, I guess, that'd be an easy way to say that just get money for owning stuff. I mean, there's an article, I can't find it, but I printed it out. It drove me crazy. I thought about putting it on a list, but it was like self-care by being a landlord.
Yes, that was a good one.
And
Did you see this one, Emma? This was in the New York Times.
I'll send it to you. Maybe we'll talk about it later in the week or something. But it was like these women saying, like, yeah, things got really stressful. I had a divorce, and it was really nice to have 21 properties in my portfolio, so I didn't have to work somewhere. It's like, oh yeah, okay, thanks. I mean, I guess that's what like that Trudy Bush, Nancy Pelosi fans, doing. But yeah.
Yeah, just buy up some more condos to rent to people. That's like something actionable for a lot of people, I would guess, right?
Yeah, it's like I was down on my luck, so I bought property in Montana and started renting it out. It's like, man, that's some empowerment, and it's like, and I felt so empowered. It's like, yes, you did, you were empowered. That is American government, as they say in Matt Crispin's Hell of Presence, free real estate, the Tim Heidecker thing. Like you're welcome, thank Custer for that. But
we're in late stage capitalism when people like that are doing that kind of self-care as opposed to just going to a spa.
You're right. Yeah. You can just buy some spas and start making money off them. But like you said, like that's the problem with UBI is it's great, and it's great. Don't get me wrong. It's great that Biden gave us Trump and Biden gave us that money. They should do that more often. But structurally, you're going to have problems like this until you deal with the people who are just immediately hoovering that up. Well, guys, should we go over to the post game? Emma, what do you think? Can you
I'm down
stick around for a little bit?
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah. I think that's perfect. Yeah, let's do
I knew I would as soon as we got into our conversation, I'd be down to go into.
Well, I saw Emma just took that
glass
drink
of wine.
and I've gotten really thirsty.
There we go, Matt.
Wine, but yeah,
I texted Matt and I said, I'm down to talk about this if I have a glass of wine. So that was my signal to you that I was going to definitely hang out for the post game.
Well, secret
Matt, do you
message
mind
received.
previewing it a little bit then for folks?
So there was a clip of a debate for is this District 21 here in New York?
59.
59.
There's somebody. Oh, District 21 might be Alexis. Well, I'll just put it bluntly, Nomiki Konst challenged Kirsten Gonzalez to sign some kind of pledge. And I guess we'll have some comments about that and the advisability of such a tact. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning. Also, a lot of people got mad that we talked about this last time behind the paywall. So for the folks that were mad, like particularly the pro-Nomiki folks, we'll probably unlock that one and for everybody. So, your wishes I command. Anything you have to say, David?
No, yeah. Jump over at patreon.com/Left Reckoning. Thursday, I'll be going live for a Griscom stream. I'm going to talk a little bit about this new climate deal. So be sure to keep your eye out for that. And this video essay hopefully will come out this week on the post-Bernie, post-Corbyn left, building off of some stuff from Leo Panich. And merch next week, folks. I'm sorry it's been delayed so long, but soon.
Yeah,
I've seen some of it. Matt was wearing it the other day, and I got to say, it's pretty great. People should.
That's big, yeah, exactly. It's a big endorsement. I do wear that tank top basically every single day just because it's so unbearably hot. Yeah. Anyways, folks, patrons, we'll see you in about 5-10 minutes.
Sounds good.
The post game. Peace out.
See y'all there.